Around probably 4:30 on October 27th, we were all patrolling and a call came in for a EMS assist. And the call came in for a unconscious female that had labored breathing. Myself, I was patrol 1-6.
Was patrol 2-1.
And also patrol, the patrol soup 2-0 was also called in to respond to the call. We were about a minute and a half away from the scene, thankfully.
Right. We just happened to be in the area. We're both about less than 2 minutes from where the scene actually happened.
So my patrol actually got to the scene first. Originally, we were already expecting fire and EMS to be on scene. Usually with an EMS assist, fire would have already made it to the call. But in this case, they hadn't. So my patrol, we got out of our vehicle and we saw a female face down in the dirt and some spectators standing around her. My partner and I came up to where she was laying and we asked her if she could respond to any of our commands. She did not, and she was in a very poor position for breathing, so we need to get her on her back. So I told my partner I'm going to hold C-spine and we're going to roll her over on 3. So on 3 we rolled her over, and that's when we saw she was very blue purplish color, which indicated that she's not getting oxygen. It was at that moment that we needed to make and check her air and breathing. So I opened her airway and saw some gum in her mouth and removed the gum, and then checked her airway and saw that she was not breathing. There was no indications. And then I started to check her pulse. At that moment, Patrol 2-1 had arrived on scene, Sergeant Raines and his partner. I told them, this is what's going on, this is what we need to do, we need to start CPR. I thankfully had my personal go bag, and said I had a CPR mask in there, and I asked Sergeant Raines to retrieve it. He retrieved the mask, handed it to me. I then gave 1 breath and told I need compressions, and Sergeant Raines started compressions. Gave 30 compressions. I gave 2 more breaths. At that moment, Sergeant Raines continued doing 30 more compressions, and by then the fire department had arrived. It was about 45 seconds to a minute from when we started CPR to when the fire department actually arrived on scene.
So you guys were talking about only being a couple minutes away. How important for this event and any event like this specifically is a quick reaction time for something like this? Sergeant Raines, can you kind of talk about that?
Well, in any circumstance, being relatively quick to any call is important. Most of the time, our calls, our response time is we try to get there under 5 minutes. In situations like this, we have a little more authorization to go, not necessarily like unsafely, but quicker to the incident. Like I said earlier, like we just happened to be relatively close to where the incident occurred. It happened at a park, and we were kind of opposite sides but equal distance away when that call came through. With it being such an emergency and us needing to get there because she was unresponsive, unconscious, it was a matter of get there as fast and as safely as possible. So we just happened to be in the area. Most of the time it's the same circumstance. The patrol that's the closest are the ones that are dispatched. Should there not be available, then the next closest patrol is requested.
And once EMS and fire arrived for you guys, what's that, from this incident specifically, what was your role then after that? You did the compressions, you were giving breaths and things like that, and once fire and EMS got there, what was your role then after?
So fire and EMS took over the CPR and started getting AED out and had an airbag and started giving air that way. We were then need to control the scene because there's still more bystanders and children in the area, and we definitely didn't want the children to see what was going on, especially it's very traumatizing, especially at that age. Even for us, it was very scary to come upon this because we thought it was going to be a routine call, and obviously no call is really routine, but we definitely weren't expecting to find her in the state that she was. So we controlled the scene, and we tried to contact her husband at that point and tried to figure out who she was because she didn't have any identification on her.
from EMS taking over and you guys kind of controlling the scene, everything turned out okay, I assume? Everything kind of moved forward and progressed, and can you talk me through the latter half when everybody kind of was able to take that sigh of relief? Okay, she's okay, we get her settled and stabilized and then transported, kind of thing?
So initially, she was sporadic. It wasn't even like a stable. It was more along the lines that she had a steady pulse. She still wasn't quite breathing on her own, so still kind of chaotic, but we had gotten to the point that she did have a pulse that they could feel, and like it was out of the realm that they could control things where we were at. Ambulance was on scene, so we had, once they got a stable pulse, which took some time, we had probably 6 to 8 cycles of CPR, and then I believe 2 to 3 AED shocks before we actually got a stable pulse on her. Once the pulse was detected, then she was loaded into the ambulance and transported to Samaritan, where they could provide adequate care. I maintained contact with their husband, and just to check and make sure everything was okay. And even through the first evening, it was not a guarantee that she was going to pull through. After speaking with him several days later, she had been put into a medically induced coma, and she had a breathing ventilation in the ICU for 3 days prior to her being like confirmed that she was going to pull through.
So for something like this, how important is it for you in your eyes to have members of the service, whether it's MPs or anybody else in the Army, trained in medical response techniques? I mean, I'm sure you guys as MPs get military training, but how important is it to you for all members of the service to have this style training for quick responses, like something like this, which realistically saved her life?
Realistically, it probably did. When we talked to multiple other agencies, they said had we not gotten there as fast as we did and performed the steps that we had taken for her life-saving measures, that it probably wouldn't have turned out as good. So, at least, especially in situations like this, it's extremely critical that the individuals responding at least have some kind of knowledge of life-saving measures, CPR, and things of the nature that could prevent it from becoming a worse issue.